Hi, welcome Brightlights to Healers with Humor, a podcast brought to you by Candice, the visionary behind Indiglow Soul, and Shelly, the owner of Finding Your Light. Join us as we explore the intricacies of our healing experiences and share the wisdom we've accumulated along the way. In each episode, we're going to invite you into our intimate conversations where we candidly explore the highs and the lows of our healing experiences. Through our podcast, we want to extend our hands to those navigating their own path of healing, offering a sanctuary of understanding and companionship. Whether you're navigating through the shadows of self-doubt or reveling in the glow of self-discovery, Healers with Humor is there to honor the strength that it takes to heal and celebrate the joys of self-love and growth. Join us on this journey, embracing the beauty of healing and the power of community. Hi, welcome to Healers with Humor. Today is season 1, episode 3, listening to your body. Ooh, Candice, want to start us off with a card pull of the day before we start listening to our body and digging into that topic.
Yes, this is fun stuff. I love pulling cards. And so the card for today, I was led to pull by my intuition. I was listening. I got the card from the Empath's Empowerment deck, which is actually a deck you gave me for my birthday last year.
Which probably goes well with your program.
Yes, absolutely. And so the card today is called Practice Self-Soothing. And it says, you have the power to comfort yourself when you are upset. Place your hand gently over your heart. Send yourself unconditional love to ease tension and frustration. How many times have you put your hand on your heart and trying to self-soothe? I know for me, a lot of times I actually put it on my solar plexus.
I did the other day. I actually put it on my crown and my solar plexus while I was listening to some music.
Yep. Nice. So yeah, that's going to tie in beautifully with our conversation today.
Yeah, listening to our body. Well, as we both have been on this journey, right? We both had plenty of opportunities to practice listening to our bodies. Anything particular you want to share about when your body has been communicating with you?
Sure.
And how it communicates with you.
So I want to emphasize the practice, because this is not something that came naturally for me. So it's something that I had to practice over a long period of time, learning how to listen to my body and what my body was actually trying to tell me. And over time, I've had lots of conversations now about how this information comes in. But the way that I listen to my body is through pain. My body likes to speak to me through pain. And so I've asked to have that dialed back a little bit over time, because I don't need to feel as much pain as I have.
Get your attention.
It gets my attention. And I think my spirit team, that's really the only way that they knew how to communicate with me in getting me to pay attention, because otherwise I just muscled through whatever I needed to muscle through, because that's how I had lived very unconsciously, right, through most of my life. But when the pain gets to be too much, you finally surrender and start to listen. So for me, and I think I've talked about this before, but when I have something going on physically, I know I've connected the dots enough that I have something emotional that needs to be dealt with. And it could be something from, in the moment, or it could be from the past. And for me, that started in 2018. I know we talked about this in the introduction, was the foot pain. And that's just something that didn't go away. I did all the things. And until I was introduced to emotion code, where I understood that I was trapping emotions in my body, that I was able to connect, oh, this pain is actually telling me I have emotions that need to be dealt with. And so that's really how I was introduced to it. And then I've had a lot of pain in my body over the years before I started listening to my body. And so once I started listening and I knew what my body was trying to tell me through this pain, I worked to slow down. And when the pain came on, I worked to listen to it. Because again, I really just kind of muscled through. So once I started slowing down, I started listening a little bit more. And just as an example of what that looked like for me is when I was on my sabbatical from my corporate job, my husband and I were supposed to go away. We were supposed to go away for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. And the day that we were supposed to be leaving, I just got this massive knot in my stomach. And I sat and I listened to it and my body said, "Don't go." And I thought, well, why wouldn't I, like, this is going to be fun. Why wouldn't I go on vacation with my husband to someplace fun? And I couldn't explain it at the time, but I just knew that I had to listen, that we weren't supposed to go. And it was not an overly comfortable conversation for me to have with my husband because I knew I was going to disappoint him. Right. And we talked about in the last session, our last episode, that we can feel other people's feelings. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. And then we don't do things or say things we need to because we don't want to make others uncomfortable. And so listening to my body really allowed me to come to the understanding that I needed to do this for myself.
Especially
And
when it's something you wanted to do.
yes. Yeah. So he's been lovely. God bless him. He was like, "Okay, nope, that's fine. We're not going to go. It's, not a big deal. We've got plenty of time to do all these things. If you need, to stay home and be in more stillness, then that's fine." But it was really hard, right? It was a hard conversation to have, especially to your point when you're looking forward to something. And just recently, you actually helped me with this. Again, we've moved to this, lovely beach location and spending a lot more time at the beach. And I recognized when I got back from the beach that my whole body hurt. I was like, why does my body hurt so bad? And so I had done some of my own stuff. And again, this goes back to the vulnerability of asking for help. You and I were having conversation, and I thought, I moved to this beach land to enjoy. I don't want to have all this pain every time I come back from the beach. And you said, there's something about the beach that's triggering something for you, and it's from an early childhood memory. And so from that, I dug in and did a belief code session on what was triggering and causing that pain. And as I did that, I understood, right, what that pain was from an experience. I actually had a couple of flashbacks, an experience that I had had back when I was younger on the beach, whatever that looked like. But I think at the end of the day, our bodies want to heal themselves, right? And we have the ability and the power to do that as long as we're listening and we know how.
Yeah, your body was sending you a very clear message, right? Something that you love to do that makes you happy
Mhm.
was triggering pain.
Mhm.
And if you had not been listening and just decided that you were going to avoid the beach, that would be one way of handling it.
Yeah.
And the other way is diving right in to say, what is my body saying? And what do I need to do about it?
Mhm.
Very different approaches.
Yes. Can you give us a few examples of how your body communicates with you?
Sure. Just recently in this past week, and we talked a little bit about it in the last episode, was my throat.
Mm.
I've done really well. A couple years ago, I'd had problems with a persistent cough after getting COVID, but I've been, I'll say, a year and a half cough free until about a week ago. And we had to actually dive into and you called me out on it, taking a couple days before I asked for help. But it took me a couple days to realize, right, this isn't just something that I ate. This isn't just, you know, for the weekend. I don't have this under control.
Mhm.
It is more than it's getting my attention, right? It's annoying. It's bothering me. It's getting my attention. But what am I not listening to? So, certainly, a cough is a great way to get my attention as somebody who never wants a persistent cough again. It was really connected to a lot of conversations that I had had in the previous week. And I needed to be aware of the conversations that I have with people, the tone that they have, the tone that I have,
Mhm.
and the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
And so certainly not only did I learn a lot from that situation, but also really was forced to really pay attention to my body, right? I'm not always, if it's a headache, back in the day, I would just pop a Tylenol or an ibuprofen, right?
Mhm.
And now I ask the question, what's going on? Is it
Mhm.
something I need to take something for? And if I think back before I understood that everything is really a culmination of physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental
Mhm.
components, I suffered with SIBO for over 7 years, which is a disease of the small intestine where you have to eliminate many fruits and vegetables.
Mm.
And we worked together on that one.
Mhm.
As I worked to become a healer, it was one of the things I focused on for many years. And I was really disappointed in myself for not understanding how to release that. And and you said something to me the one day, well, do you understand why your body showed it to you in that way? And
Mhm.
I had not.
Mhm.
Right? And so sitting down to say, what did my body want to say to me? Why did it say it at the time? What was going on at the time of
Mhm.
my life? And pretty much I had lost all my favorite fruits and vegetables. And my body was saying, how many more of the things that you love do you have to lose before you'll do something about it?
Mhm.
And whoo.
Man, oof, chills everywhere.
Which says probably something about my level of stubbornness and how much how much my body had to talk to get my
Mhm.
attention, right? And I this time it took me 3 days, last time, it took me years. So, I
Yeah.
think that says I've come a long way in listening to my body, but your body speaks, right? Are you listening?
Mhm. Yeah. No, same. And I had a bulge disc in my lower back as I was going through some of the early stages of my healing, and I very clearly looking back, it was definitely trying to tell me something,
Mhm.
and I wasn't listening to it in the way that I would listen to it now. But I went through an immense amount of pain and probably should have taken a leave of absence from work, quite honestly. But I muscled through it because that's what I always did. And so, yeah, I totally get it. But to your point, right now I can recognize that there's something going on and I ask my body. I'm much more gentle with my body. But how did you get in touch with your body and your intuition? How did that come up for you?
So I think a lot of it had to do with me getting into classes on meditation and classes on intuition
Mhm.
because I think I was so disconnected from my body. I'm not sure I was ever quiet enough to hear my body.
Mhm.
So meditation actually helped me sort of quiet the mind and really ask myself questions.
Mm.
Intuition, which was definitely a skill that had to build, understanding that there were other factors. I think for so long, we're taught that when you have pain or there's an issue, that it's physical, right? You go to the doctor.
Mhm.
And so much of how I explore it now is not via the doctor.
Mhm.
It's more of meditation, sitting down with myself and asking my body, is it physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual?
Mhm.
And then really diving into that.
Yeah.
Would you say that you do it in similar ways, or how have you been going about that?
Yeah. So to your point, completely disconnected from my body for decades. And so it wasn't until I took my sabbatical in that stillness, I really in like that beginning part of my spiritual journey, so much stillness really brought in more information. So I had been smelling something, and I remember having a conversation with my husband. We were watching TV, and I thought, "Is there something burning? Like, we're not cooking anything. Do you smell that?" He's like, "I don't know what you're smelling, but I don't smell it." It's like, "Really? You don't smell it? It's very strong." He's like, "Nope." And I was like, "Okay, we're gonna end that conversation. I don't know what this is." And that happened probably, multiple times before I actually figured out what it was. But it wasn't until I was in that stillness that messages started to come in. And so that smell is what we talk about in the spiritual world, the clairs. And from an empath perspective, I talk about them as your superpowers. And so that clairsalience is really the first time I realized something outside of me was happening that I could connect into that really didn't make a lot of sense. But now that clairsalience is still with me. Sometimes it smells good, sometimes it doesn't. But I know that that's the other side trying to communicate to me. So it's, ancestors, it's angels, it's archangels. And, quite honestly, I use my pendulum. I use my pendulum a lot to make sure that what I'm hearing, right? So another clair, what do they call that one? The clairaudient, where I'm not necessarily hearing voices, but I'm hearing information, that it's not me just making stuff up, right? Because we all have this internal dialogue that happens all day. So I'm very cognizant that I want to make sure that it's not just my internal dialogue that I'm hearing. And so the pendulum allows me to differentiate that. But yeah, and in trusting that intuition was also a big piece, right? Because especially in the beginning, we don't necessarily trust what we're hearing or how to go about it. But I started in classes as well once I kind of understood what was happening. And those classes really helped me understand what those gifts, I guess I'll call them, were, and that everybody has them differently and some are stronger for others. But I had a family member that had passed away young. So a more distant family member, but he was young. And so I remember asking if he had any messages for anybody in his family that he wanted to give from the other side. And I didn't hear anything immediately, right? And so I went about my business. And then the next day, the smell came in. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had to still myself, and I got some information that he wanted to share. And then I had to figure out how to share it, right? Because you can't just call someone up and be like, so I have a message I'd like to share. And so I don't even remember what I did or how I said it, but I found a way to come across not as a crazy person, I think, and share the information. And what I got back was beautiful, which was I had no idea that he had kept this. And by you showing me that this is where it was just super meaningful, super, super meaningful. And so that just really allowed me to understand that the gifts were real and that what I was receiving was real and that I needed to listen more.
Mm. So I think the things that I want to make sure that I kind of recap from what you said and fully agree with, it's in that quiet space.
Mhm,
It's definitely when you sense a voice that you know is not your own.
mhm.
Certainly you do that with a pendulum. I do that with a pendulum as well. I don't know that you'll ever find the two of us without one or six. But I do think one of the things, and certainly we're going to put a link to your website because you have an ebook that covers the clairs, but
Mhm,
the to have a general understanding of the clairs, because one of the things that you and I have talked about is that when you go to these classes and people talk about the way in which you will hear or wait for information as you're trying to learn what intuition is, what does it feel like, how does it come to you.
mhm,
I really struggled at the beginning because so much of what they were talking about was being able to see, and clairvoyance was not one of my beginning or strongest gifts.
mhm,
Mine was clairaudient. So I had sat for, days thinking that if I just squinted hard enough or, focused enough during meditation that I would begin to see the messages and build my intuition.
mhm,
And really, for me, it comes through hearing, being clairaudient, and then working with the other clairs, years later, right? As they nicely play together, as most of us have some ability to use all of them.
yeah.
But it is interesting for me, and you mentioned it too, right? Sometimes it's in smell, sometimes it's in seeing, sometimes it's in hearing, sometimes it's in knowing. So it can be different ways, right? But
Mhm.
sitting there with my gaze softened for an hour isn't wasn't
Wasn't
going to
helpful?
wasn't going to help me based on how my gifts work.
Mhm.
And so I think that it can be frustrating to someone who is working to build intuition and learn those skills. Sit and see how it comes to you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're both saying is see how it comes to you. What are you noticing?
Mhm.
You know, for me, and I always laugh, it was a voice that I heard in the bathroom one day. So they don't recognize personal space, but I certainly was getting a message in a voice that was not my own while using the restroom one day.
Mhm.
And definitely wasn't expecting someone else to be in there with me.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so that's, a huge part of, again, listening to your body, trusting your intuition, understanding that there are these supersensory gifts that we all have and that we may have the same gift and experience it a little bit differently. I definitely have more of a I definitely have clear knowing, so that clear cognizance where you just know things, right? I think that's been a big piece of that sacral or that gut knowing. Like you
Mm.
just know things sometimes. That's, I think, understanding that that's what that was. I've always had that, but I didn't understand what it was. That's a big piece. And then through this spiritual awakening, I would say that the clairvoyance, the clear seeing is a lot more of what I have. So from a third eye perspective, I get a lot of messages in my third eye, especially when I'm working with other people. I get them for myself, but I get a lot of them when I work with other people. And so if you've ever been in session with me and we've done some clearing, I'll be like, "Oh, I just got a message," or "I just saw, this word," or "I could see, something breaking apart or melting away." So that's a big piece of even how I work now. But yeah, we all have the clairs. It's just a matter of which one's stronger. And and I know that you've worked to strengthen some of yours that maybe weren't the prominent ones. And I've done the same, right? When I did the Akashic Records training, I definitely strengthened some of the clairs of the knowing and not necessarily relying so much on what was coming in through my third eye, but through my crown chakra.
You know, I think that knowing in your gut, which I kind of view as the knowing, I think I just want to touch base back on that
Mhm.
because I think a lot of times it defies logic
Mhm.
and you don't have an explanation for why you know it or why you believe that to be the choice to make.
Yep.
And if you bring the logic into there, right, you won't make the best decision. You could certainly make a very different decision.
Mhm.
And for both of us who were very logical
Very.
and have really worked to strengthen right intuition as opposed to making decisions with logic, that's a very different thought process.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
I never met a spreadsheet I didn't like.
I'm more of a PowerPoint, but well, as we think about like how someone n- goes about being more present in their body
Mm.
and learning to listen and answer or work through what their body is asking for, what would you suggest to folks?
I think the first thing is that slowing down. So really just, and it doesn't have to be, months of stillness, right? But it's the when you feel the twinge or you feel, whatever it is that's coming in, just take a second, take a moment, acknowledge it, and then see if you get more information. See if, something else happens. And they're going to be small moments, right? They're not usually these big, like huge aha moments. It's for me anyway, it's been, small, consistent over time things that I've learned and built upon. So, okay, when this happens, then it might mean that this is going on. And so let me look at that first. F- The biggest piece for me was learning how to understand my own energy. And so using a pendulum, I started with a sway testing first. And that was big. And then obviously, using a pendulum, I remember standing at my kitchen counter, like swaying back and forth when I was doing emotion code for the first time. And I thought, God, this is kind of obnoxious. I don't want to have to stand up every time I want to find out if I have an emotion, right? That's trapped. And so I learned how to use a pendulum, and that's much more convenient. And so just connecting into that energy of your body and just taking the small chances or small periods of time that you can just connect in and listen.
Yeah, I think for me, right, that quiet piece,
Mhm.
taking time was huge. I think the other big pieces were being kind and grateful,
Mm.
thankful to my body.
Mhm, mm, gosh,
So being
yes.
curious. So instead of being frustrated at what my body, getting
Mhm,
curious about what it was trying to say.
mhm.
Stop popping something out of the cabinet
Every time.
for every time. Be like, I'll just take another two, whatever's,
Mhm,
right? Asking more questions. And the other piece that I really did one summer, and it was one of the things that, it's not just for the summer, but I would get up every Saturday morning and say, what does my body want to do today?
mm,
Not only did I have an amazing summer, but I felt like it was an opportunity where I had said to my body, this is your season for me to get to know your voice
mm.
and me to be committed to listening.
Nice.
And it was huge. Not only did it take me on, I'll say, a number of
Mm,
adventures, but also gave me the permission to rest,
mm.
right? If that's what my
Yeah.
body said I needed that day, really focusing on my body said it needed to rest, just like it was another person that I was taking into account, right?
Mhm,
You get to pick the activities of today.
mhm,
And so you certainly more grateful, right? If I think back to when I mentioned SIBO earlier in the episode, grateful that my body was trying to communicate.
mhm. Yeah.
I should have been more curious, right? I didn't
Mhm,
understand the way that I needed to be curious,
mhm.
but certainly I can approach it very differently today.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. You talked about, the curious and the asking questions. I do that now, and sometimes I even struggle with it a little bit, but I didn't grow up being able to ask a lot of questions.
Mm.
And so that disconnected piece, it's taken me a long time to learn what questions to ask and how to ask them and to be curious and understand that not everything that's happening to me is outside of me.
Mm.
I think that's a big piece that, again, the things that are happening in my body are from experiences that may have happened right to me, but it's how my body's processing them. And I get curious about why and how. That took me a long time. I'm probably still learning, how to do that more effectively. But yeah, the question piece, I don't question a lot of things because it's not my nature. So becoming more comfortable with that has been interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely feel like I always followed the rules and,
Mhm.
went about it how I was either taught to go about it or I saw other people.
Mhm.
And I think one of the biggest lessons along this journey has really been that me and my body, mind, and spirit know me the best
Yeah.
to work on me and what I need.
Mhm.
And that's a different approach, right? Everything in the world teaches us to be outside of ourselves.
Yes.
What did they do on the internet, right? What did our friends suggest for us to do? Go to
Mhm.
the doctor or go to a yoga class or whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
But you know what you need to do for you
Mhm.
and you're the best expert on you.
Yes. Yep. Very nice. So, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, what are some of the best ways that you've found to be more present in your body? I know we've talked about that a little bit, but how how have you been more present and then give your body what it wants. So you talked about the season of me, right? A couple year or so ago, or the summer of you. What were some of the ways that you heard your body or listened to your body? Like what are some of the things it was saying? Was it all through the hearing, the knowing? Like what were some of the clues that you got?
So I certainly think the clues, right? If I think about this past week with the throat and the coughing that I was doing,
Mhm.
it was definitely a clue about, was my voice able to be heard?
Mhm.
Was I able to speak and be honest about how I felt?
Mm.
And
God, that's
what
huge.
what was what was the reaction of others to that, right? And then what effect did it have on me?
Mhm.
And so a simple conversation, an energy exchange isn't actually a simple conversation.
Mhm.
How I talk to others, how I talk to myself, all of those things came into play. And it definitely has me thinking more as I listen to my body, right? What is my body saying to others? What am I saying to myself?
Mhm.
And you can actually see all of those come into play, right? Because I believe that our words have power, our intentions have power, right? Everything's
Mhm.
energy. And so if you think about our bodies, right, what we do, what we say, what we experience, all really play into that.
Mhm.
And the way that I'd say I am more present in my body is that normally I would have disassociated when things got tough or frustrating or irritating. And like you said, really powered through, right? And I can move at a lot faster pace when I choose to disassociate.
Mhm.
But that's not how I wanted to be as a person. And it doesn't allow me to be very present.
Mhm.
So when you slow down to be present in the moment and take in what's actually happening and how you feel,
Mhm.
it definitely slows you down.
Mhm.
Right? Sometimes it can be more uncomfortable because you're actually experiencing it.
Mhm.
But the good part or the best part from me is that you actually understand it, learn something from it, touch base with your body, do something about it,
Mm.
right? I
Mhm.
called you, we did a release.
Mhm.
And then I've certainly tapped into it over the last week as a little bit has still lingered on.
Mhm.
But every day I'm checking in with my body,
Mm.
right? So I take a moment and I say, what do we have going on? What do you need
Mhm.
today?
Yeah.
So certainly more present as opposed to either ignoring it or covering it up.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, as someone who also spent a lifetime disassociated from my body, using emotion code and probably more body code has allowed me to understand what I was holding in my body. It's allowed me to integrate back into my body. And again, because I didn't really question things, and a lot of what I have is repressed, right? I have a lot of repressed memories. I don't remember most of my childhood. So
Mm.
it's hard for me to understand what might have happened or could have happened. And the reality is I don't really need to, right? I need to understand how it's impacting me today, specifically in pain. Uh, I'll give you an example of just this morning. I woke up and I could hardly walk. The top of my knee, the bottom of my thigh was like seized up. The heck is going on? So I came out into the living room. And, obviously my husband could see he was already up before me. I was hobbling along and I was like, I just need a minute to figure this out. And so I went into body code and, there were all kinds of things going on and it was all from the past and it was something that was ready to be released. But if I didn't take that moment, if I didn't pay attention, I either would have hobbled along all day. I would have downed a bunch of, Tylenol or Advil and it probably wouldn't have gotten better. And so really, again, paying attention to the things that are happening in our bodies. And then I don't know about you, but my inner child likes to talk to me a lot too when
Mm.
things aren't going well. And so learning some in a therapy called internal family systems, learning how to go in and connect into little Candice at different ages and understanding kind of what happened to her and getting her to trust me and learn that I can take control of my body and my nervous system, and all of those things has been a big piece as well. So allowing her to trust me and come back and know that I'm going to be safe has helped me come back into my body as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe the only thing that we probably haven't touched on today about listening to the body is that we both work as healers,
Mhm.
in some capacity and with many modalities. But that's certainly what we do when we help others during a session is really listening to their body, right? Their body's been trying to communicate, and
Mhm.
there are things ready to be released or areas of pain that need work. And we're both listening to their bodies about where to go.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So,
Yep, and if I bring it back to the card that we pulled at the beginning, which is to practice the self-soothing, deep breathing, obviously, very, very helpful to come back into your
mm.
body, grounding, right? Spending some time outside. I've not done it, but forest bathing, I hear is a thing. Um, I like to go to the beach and ground into the sand, right? Into the ocean, the salt water. But yeah, just having an appreciation for our bodies, our minds, our souls, right? We've been through this, whatever we've been through in this lifetime, and just having some grace that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, exactly at the right time, and all that good stuff helps me a lot.
Well said. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your pain that you've experienced and how you've dealt with it.
Yeah,
And
you too.
hopefully, listeners will understand how they might listen to their body
Hmm.
and be more present and understanding where their pain is coming from.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Shelly.
Thanks.
As we conclude this episode of Healers with Humor, we want to express our deepest gratitude to you, fellow Brightlights. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt exploration. Our journey began with a chance encounter at an expo, two souls seeking healing and connection. Through shared experiences, laughter, and tears, we forged a bond rooted in trust, love, and the relentless pursuit of growth. We invite you to continue this journey with us by sharing your own healing stories and connecting with us. Your presence in our community enriches our collective healing experience, and we're honored to walk alongside you. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore topics that resonate with the soul, offering insights, guidance, and inspiration along the way. Until then, remember, you are not alone on your healing journey. Thank you for tuning in, and may your path be illuminated with love, courage, and endless possibilities.